You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Rishi Colbert, I'm going to go to you first. It's called getting off your lazy asses and using your power. And I know people out there are sitting there going, well, yeah, but that's what we told you. I keep telling y'all, two people are going to win, Trump or Biden. Who was going to win in Georgia? It was going to be Loeffler and Perdue or Ossoff and Warnock, bottom line. But can't nobody out there say, I didn't warn you that after we vote, then we have to make them do what they said they were going to do. That's what we're talking about here, Reese.
Absolutely. And I think that, personally, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is getting off way too easy in all this because it's popular to try to hound, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. But do you see people having to hound Speaker Pelosi? She always gets the job done, even though her margins in Congress are slim, much slimmer than what she had in the last session of Congress. But it seems like Chuck Schumer is asleep at the wheel. He's the one who has the out-of-control caucus. He's the one who has the caucus members who are trying to derail Biden's cabinet nominees. He's the one who has his nominees, who are his caucus members, who are undermining the fight for $15 minimum wage, which is the Biden-Harris promise, as well as a Democratic promise. Almost all the Democrats ran on that. And so I think there needs to be considerably more pressure on Chuck Schumer, who is up for re-election in 2022. Now, granted, he's very popular in his home state of New York. Primarying him probably would not result in a successful primary. But I just think that, it's his first time being majority leader, and he was minority leader throughout the entire Trump presidency. So it's time for him to step up. It's time for him to make stuff happen because that's his job as majority leader. And if he's not capable of to it, then somebody else needs to step up and do that job because I'm not seeing it from him. And it seems like they're just not as united as they need to be. And that's going to be the biggest hindrance when it comes to passing any kind of agenda, particularly anything that's going to take more than 50 votes without Chuck Schumer being willing to scrap the filibuster.
Mm-hmm. Erica, they got to fight. They got to be willing to fight. They got to be willing to scrap. They got to be willing to go hard. And they got to learn how to, again, wield power. And I'm sick of all this nice shit. I'm sick of it. Okay, we dealt with 4 years of Republicans. No, not 4 years. The last 2 years of Obama. So for the last 6 years, Republicans like, hell no, we ain't passing jack. We ain't confirming judges. Y'all can pass all the bills in the House you want to. They're going to die in the Senate. Now you have the power. It's 50-50. And yes, you have to sit here and kiss the butter mansion in Siena, but somebody got to go to them and say, hey, fool, guess what? If you idiots don't end the filibuster bill and we don't pass the John Lewis Act, y'all going to be in the minority in 2023?
Absolutely, because it was Georgians that delivered Warnock and Ossoff. 1.3 million Georgians braved to vote by mail. And when we look at the actions of Speaker Ralston, which I'm glad that Cliff Albright brought his name forward, January the 7th, the day after the insurrection, the day after the senatorial victory in Georgia, Speaker Ralston, who has been Speaker of the Georgia House of Representatives since 2010, stood up the Georgia Special Committee on Election Integrity. And that committee, which does comprise Barry Fleming, who Cliff Albright also mentioned, I counted so far 47 anti-democratic, anti-voting bills that they have introduced since January. And 4 of those bills are already engrossed, meaning that they've already passed over to the Senate and that they've been certified by the Senate Secretary. They are actively and have been actively working since the day after the United States Capitol was taken over by insurrectionists and treasonists. They have been working to effectively ensure that Georgians do not see victory again. So based on those merits of victory that Georgia delivered to the Senate, it is only becoming that they take action. And so even we're looking at these big two bills, House Bill 531 in Georgia, SB 241, which are egregious in nature, that you have the Senate Ethics Committee that was meeting at 7:30 in the morning to get a hearing on it. Those two bills, which would effectively ban mobile voting, which would also ensure that folks who wanted to vote by mail again, that they would have to be able to provide a copy of their driver's license or a copy of their state-issued Georgia ID. Those are the acceptable forms of ID just to request their ballot. There are a whole other bunch of hoops that folks have to jump through in order to submit their ballot. And this is detrimental for communities, particularly rural communities. They don't have printing facilities or access to copiers or scanners in their community to be able to do those things. For folks who don't have a Georgia state ID or a Georgia driver's license, they may have only their tribal identification. The bills that are coming out are fast and swift. We have crossover day, because I'm back in Georgia. We have crossover day that should be taking place on March the 5th. And if those bills get over to crossover day, then we're really talking about an uphill battle. So Georgians are getting ready. They are protesting today. There's another big protest that'll be happening on Monday when these bills will either be going through committee or have another hearing or actually go through HB 531, be going to the floor for a vote. There is trouble in the water. And so the response needs to be absolutely for HR 1 and 4 to pass, because we can see that Georgia has definitely cranked up the heat around that preclearance that was struck down with the Voting Rights Act. They are actively ensuring that folks who are disabled, people who are elderly, people who are immunocompromised, people who want to vote, that it is more difficult for them to do. We are in a crisis state, and we need for our Congress to respond accordingly to all 43 states.
Bottom line here, Dr. Greg Card, for those people who don't understand history, who don't understand the reality, black leaders, civil rights leaders, for years, they have threatened, they have made it perfectly clear that we're going to use the power of the people to bring them to the nation's capital to force you to do what you do. It was A. Philip Randolph who threatened a mass march on Washington to force the hand of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Simple as that. It's been other leaders who have done that. So what we're talking about ain't new, okay? It's not new. Black folks have always done that. And this is also an issue that can garner support from other people to stand with us, okay? Young people, Latinos, Asians, Native Americans. The issue of voter suppression cuts across so many different areas, and I think the polling numbers would be there. We've got to have people who are going to push hard enough to, if somebody don't have the heart to get rid of the filibuster to pass this bill, because you're not going to get 10 Republican votes, then guess what, Greg? We got to give them some heart, and that might mean a swift kick in the butt.
There's no question, Roland. I'm actually very encouraged. I'm energized. And I congratulate the white nationalists who are now in the Republican Party. I encourage them in their fight because I have no stake in this country. If it's going to remain a settler project, it can go to hell. And what history of this country showed us is that at moments like this, the future of the country, in terms of what happens in the immediate wake of these type of actions, is pretty predictable. The Civil War, Reconstruction, the Civil Rights Movement. And these white nationalists, congratulations, white boys and girls, because you're going to destroy your country. And that's not necessarily a bad thing for the people who live in it. What do I mean by that? The Senate wasn't flipped in January with the runoff election. We know who Manchin was. We knew who Sinema was. What happened was the thing was put close enough to engage in an all-out war. Joe Manchin, tool of the special interests in his formerly coal mining West Virginia, should be destroyed. And he should be destroyed by those who call themselves allies. I'm not talking about black and brown people. I'm talking about the white people who said they're allies of democracy and they're for people. He should move down to West Virginia. And if polling data can be trusted, and I think some of it can. There are a number of white nationalists who actually support much of the legislation in the Biden-Harris agenda, and they can be turned against Joe Manchin. This is full spectrum last death cry rattle for the white nationalists. And so we have to understand, now is not the time to react out of emotion. Americans generally are politically immature, and Black America in this regard is no different. We didn't win in January. What we did was won the right to fight another round. And now we're engaged in a 20-month war. Right. And we said this, Roland, you've been saying this all along. We're in a 22-month war right now. If they pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, it is going to be appealed to the Supreme Court, and they've got a 6-3 majority between Justice McConnell Gorsuch and Justice McConnell Barrett, along with Justice Beer Kavanaugh. They will, because remember, any Voting Rights Act is only pursuant to the power Congress has under Section 2 of the 15th Amendment. They will simply interpret it as being unconstitutional. There are 2 cases on the docket of the Supreme Court this session: Brnovich versus Democratic National Committee and Arizona GOP versus Democratic National Committee. Those are testing whether or not Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, as it currently exists, is constitutional. Look for Justice Clarence Thomas, who has a whole head made of bone, to stand with his racist friends in the deep Uncle Tom style, and do what he did in the case that we saw him write a dissent in this week, GOP versus DeGraff and Reed, where he said an election free from strong evidence of systemic fraud is not alone sufficient for election confidence. One of the most exquisitely absurd sentences in the history of SCOTUS jurisprudence. Why am I saying all this? I'm saying that voting is one tool in our battle, but this is not American Idol. This isn't a popularity contest. And if and when they pass these laws, this isn't the time to take it out on the people who we have elected. It is the time now to engage in an extraordinarily more significant fight and to expand the battlefield. Smiling Ben Sass, you punk. Young Josh Hawley, you punk. And all you racists on the GOP side who nobody ever even thinks to narrate in the calculus of who will and won't vote, your states are not lily white. I'll end with this. The striking thing now, when you read this DeGraff and Reed decision that came down this week, is that Alito, is that Gorsuch, is that Thomas, particularly Thomas, are willing to try to blunt the force of state Supreme Courts. Why? Because these white nationalists and their Tom servant understand this in the coming waves of what will happen in this little settler colony as it disintegrates. State court, Supreme Court justices, many of them are elected by statewide ballots, meaning you can't gerrymander them. You can't racially exclude them. So these legislatures that are passing these laws, if they're involving state constitutions, they can be blocked by state Supreme Courts. It's time for us not to get emotional. As John Clark, you say, don't get mad, get smart. It's time to up the tactical advantage and bust this little country out. It's going to fall either way. Be smarter than to think if you lose a battle, somehow you've lost the war. It's time to increase the engagement, not diminish it.
Absolutely. Folks, I told you this was going to happen, which means if you say a war is coming, prepare yourself, undergird yourself. And we're going to keep sounding this alarm. Mainstream media can keep doing what the hell they're doing. We're prepared. And if that means that we're going to take this show back to Georgia, to staying with folks there, we're going to do that. We're going to focus on what's happening in Pennsylvania. The same thing is happening there. We're going to use our power, which is why y'all have got to support what we do. Because what we're talking about here, folks, is our future and that of our children, our children's children. If the Republicans are able to use the power of political gerrymandering and lock these laws into place, you're talking about not only control for the next 10 years until the next United States Census, they're going to have it gerrymandered so bad that they're even talking about in Pennsylvania and other states going to district judges because they're angry at the state Supreme Court ruled against Republicans. That's how serious this is. I told y'all, They want to use the power of the judicial branch on the federal and the state level to keep in place white supremacy. So when America's and the nation majority of people of color by 2043, we are still going to be, frankly, slavery without shackles. That is their goal. And we're going to keep fighting that. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most.
You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible.
A disturbing new video has hit the internet showing yet another unarmed black teen being abused by law enforcement. Now, the Baton Rouge Police Department is investigating the arrest of a 13-year-old black boy who was put into a chokehold by one of its officers. As an audience of teenagers pled for the officer to stop, the video shows the officer lying on top of the boy with his arm firmly locked around his neck. Two teenagers were arrested after the escapade, and one was charged with battery of a police officer. Members of the community are requesting for the body cam footage to be made public, while Baton Rouge's mayor called the incident concerning. Take a look at this video. At this time, no disciplinary actions have been put forward for these officers. I want to bring my panel back in. Robert, I feel like, once again, we have these conversations time and time again where we see an officer, whether it be a resource officer or an officer from the city's department, doing something to minority kids. Why do we continue to have these conversations?
Well, a few reasons, and any longtime viewer of our Wednesday panel knows, I have a fictional young girl that I like to bring out in situations like this named Lily White. So imagine that instead of being a 13-year-old black boy, that was a 13-year-old blonde-haired, blue-eyed white girl in a cheerleading or a Girl Scout outfit when a headlocked by a police officer. What would be America's response to that? Will we just be talking about that on Roland Martin Unfiltered, or would that be on the front page of the New York Times? Would that be on leading every cable news broadcast? Would Nancy Grace and Laura Ingraham be broadcasting live from the scene? Oh, and let it have been a big black police officer choking out Lily White on the street. I'm pretty sure they would have helicoptered in everybody to make sure that she was well taken care of, because I think they're still looking for Natalie Hollowell till this day. We have to understand that in this country, you have a couple concepts working concurrently. You have the concept of age overestimation. That is a sociological construct where white people, when they see a black child, do not see a black child. It's been shown in study after study. We all know the doll test done by sociologists. The overestimation test, they'll show white people pictures of black children, ages 8 till 15 years old. And then generally the responses will come back. They'll ask them, how old is this child or this person? They'll say 20, 25, 30 sometimes, depending on the child. Particularly the darker the child, the older they think that they are. So often when police officers are interceding with our children, just as we saw in the Tamir Rice case, they're not interceding with a child. They don't view them with the same way that they would see Lily White. They see them as a large, aggressive black man who needs to be subdued, the same way those first Dutchmen who got off that boat in West Africa saw the Mandinka tribe and figured out they needed to fight these dudes off. That's what they are seeing when they see our young black boys, and they feel they need to choke them and fight them. Also, we have to deal with the concept of overcriminalization. White kids can just have a fight and just go home to their parents, and then they talk about the fight. And that's all that happens. And guess what? If the cops come, they'll say, hey, don't be out here fighting. and they'll send them home to their parents. Black kids get put in chokeholds. They get put into the back of police cars. They get handcuffs put on them. They get into the criminal justice system. They get put into alternative schools and then get fed into the school to prison pipeline going forward. So something like a shoplifting case or a schoolyard fight now turns into a Class C felony on their record, which prevents them from applying to law school in 15 years. So we have to overall look at the way the system looks at young African Americans and then normalize being Black in this country so that your Blackness itself is not seen as an imprimatur of evil in some kind of way. You might as well have a Hydra logo or an Al-Qaeda sticker on sometimes to these officers when they see your Black skin. So until we can address this implicit bias within policing, we'll continue to have these issues. It's going to take training. It's going to take a recognition of the problem, because all you hear whenever you talk about these things, even if you talk to the officers, they'll be sincere and say, well, I'm not racist. I don't have a racist bone in my body. I got a Black dog at home. So how can I be racist? In reality, what you have to understand is breaking down implicit bias in the system is the only way to prevent these things from happening going forward.
And like you're saying, Robert, normalizing Blackness, which is something that should be a given, but it's something that needs to happen. And of course, you mentioned the case of Tamir Rice, and those officers simply said they thought he was an adult. They thought that Tamir Rice, a 12-year-old boy, was a man. But we see this time and time again where young African Americans in school or outside of school are being targeted by officers. And after what took place with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, the protests here in this nation around the world, authorities in schools here in the nation have decided to try to remove officers from school. But this wouldn't have mattered for this case with this young man. So, Scott, what do you have to say to what Robert said there?
Well, I agree with Robert, but it's deeper than that. They don't see us. They don't see us as human beings. They treat dogs, dogs better than they treat young Black men and women. They don't see us. Because if you saw me as a young Black man or young Black woman, 9 years old, 13 years old, you saw me as a child. You wouldn't be putting me in a chokehold and making out like I've got a gun and I'm a threat to your life as a police officer. Who are we giving guns and badges to? How come we're not doing psychological evaluations at the training level, at the cadet level, to see whether you are racist or whether you escalate versus de-escalate, whether you want to be a police officer for the wrong reason? And then do that on an annual basis. Find money to do that, because as long as you don't see me as human, as long as you don't see me as a law-abiding citizen, as long as you don't see me as having a mental health episode, right, you're just going to keep applying force, because you got to choose police officers who aren't like that. Because Tennessee v. Garner says you can't use deadly force on a nonviolent fleeing felon, and we continue to see these videos. It's not the laws. You can pass whatever law you want. Until the police and who you hire and who has a gun and a badge and has judgment on whether to use deadly force or de-escalation measures, you're going to continue to see Black men and women killed and abused and brutalized by Black people, by police officers. It's just a fact. I guarantee you, next month, maybe next week, we're going to be talking about more videos of more police officers abusing more Black people, not just in the South. It'll be in the North, the East, the West, and we're talking about passing laws, and I guess that gets you accountability. But until you fix who you're putting on these police forces, right? Until you fix the police unions, they won't see us.
And Scott,
and as long as they don't see us, they're going to kill us and abuse us.
And I agree with you, Scott. I mean, to your point, they'd have to gut out an entire system, right? A system, as we know, is extremely corrupt. And there have been people who have said the same thing as you said, where there needs to be a vetting process. Let's see how racist these people really are or what their intentions are when it comes to being on the force. But I've heard authorities say that if they were to do that, they'd have nobody on the force. So essentially, they're afraid of losing the officers that they do have at the expense of people who look like you and me. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, that sounds like a personal problem and a cop-out. Because if you're not going to do that, then you must have accountability. If you use deadly force inappropriately, if you don't turn on your camera as a police officer, you ought to be disciplined. You ought to be, your paycheck ought to be docked. Your pension ought to be at risk. You ought to be in danger of losing your job. If these police officers are very serious about cleaning up their ranks, and I'm not just talking about the bad actors, because I don't want to hear about bad actors. Because if you know you work with a bad actor and you don't report them, you're complicit in their bad act.
Yep.
And so until we decide that we're going to clean up these police forces, then it's just going to continue. You watch, next month, we're going to be talking about another situation.
Unfortunately, you're probably right there. Now, Monique, we have you back. Is there anything you want to say in regards to this story?
I'm sick of it. I don't have anything.
I agree.
Content-wise that can be added that hasn't already been said, except maybe this. When we talk about just the dehumanization of the Black body, I think I am concerned about now the role that all this footage and all of these videos that turn millions of people at a time into eyewitnesses. I am concerned about the role that is having in further dehumanization, because they fear and are threatened by our presence to begin with. But now people are used to seeing us choked. They're used to seeing us shot in the back. They're used to seeing us drowned. They're used to seeing us body slammed. And while I understand the necessity, because it's not enough to have eyewitnesses when it's Black folks, you have to have 1 million witnesses who march on Congress and march down Main Street in order for anything to be done. But I am bothered by the other effects of this constant loop that we now have of violence against us.
Robert, before we move on, is there anything you want to say? I think, Scott, you were trying to sneak in there.
Well, one thing, I'm just piggybacking on what Scott says, and this is why I never understand with the police officers and the unions in particular. They always say, well, it's just a couple of bad apples. But play that saying out all the way. Nobody says one bad apple, don't worry about it, things will be fine, it's just one. They say one bad apple will spoil the bunch. So if you're not rooting out that one bad apple, it spreads, it metastasizes, it becomes entrenched in your department, entrenched in the police unions, entrenched in the way that we teach policing in this country. So much so there wasn't but a couple years ago, President Trump was saying, rough them up a little bit when you put them in the car, don't cradle their heads. That's the way that many people see themselves. If you go into many of these police chat groups, and we've had to do so in Discovery for police violence cases here in Georgia before, they all are obsessed with superheroes and comic book characters and the Punisher. They see themselves as being the thin blue line to subjugate and keep these Black communities down, because if you don't, then they'll start spilling over and interrupting the white communities. We're going through that right here in Atlanta, where people are losing their minds because, oh no, the Black people are starting to rob folks in Lenox and in Buckhead and in Sandy Springs. Been robbing folks in the Bluff for 30 years, been robbing folks on down in the SWATs for 30 years. They don't care about that there, because they see their job as the thin blue line to separate the wild poor people from the rich folks and their domestic tranquility. And until you root those bad apples out of the bunch, it's going to poison the entire basket.
Scott, final words.
And you see that 9-year-old, if you run back to that video, you could hardly see this little 9-year-old. He wasn't a big kid. And this cop is on top of him, choking him. You could hardly see the kid. He couldn't have weighed more than 70 pounds, maybe. And when they don't see you, they do things like that to you.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Folks, let's now go to a huge story that dropped yesterday. First of all, yesterday was the 56th anniversary of the assassination of Malcolm X. And what was amazing yesterday was when lawyers came together and revealed what they called new evidence of a conspiracy perpetrated by the NYPD and the FBI to assassinate the civil rights activist in Harlem. The family of Ray Wood, a black man who worked as an undercover police officer in the 1960s, and their attorney now claim Wood wrote a letter on his deathbed confessing the NYPD and the FBI conspired to kill Malcolm X. Wood's cousin, Reginald Wood Jr., read the letter during Saturday's press briefing in Manhattan.
This is the original letter that was sent to my father on February 9th of 2011. I'm going to read a copy. I preserved it for the district attorney and whoever needs this for the court case to be able to exonerate the people that Ray was concerned that had been convicted because of his actions. It's dated January 25th, 2011. I, Raymond A. Wood, being of sound mind and body, wished to confess the following. I was a black New York City undercover police officer from April 1964 through May of 1971. I participated in actions that in hindsight were deplorable and detrimental to the advancement of my own black people. My actions on behalf of the New York City Police Department, Bossy, were done under duress and fear that if I did not follow the orders of my handlers, I could face detrimental consequences. Presently, I am aging with failing health. Recently, I have learned of the death of Mr. Thomas Johnson and are deeply concerned that with my death, his family will not be able to exonerate him after being wrongfully convicted in the killing of Malcolm X. The facts are as follows. April 17, 1964, I was hired by the New York City Police Department. Without training, I was immediately assigned to the Bossy Investigation Unit. After witnessing repeated brutality at the hands of my coworkers, in parentheses, police, I tried to resign. Instead, I was threatened with arrest by penning marijuana and alcohol trafficking charges on me if I did not follow through with the assignments. Under the direction of my handlers, I was told to encourage leaders and members of the civil rights groups to commit felonious acts. The Statue of Liberty bombing idea was created by my supervisor / handler. Using surveillance, the agency learned that Bo and Saeed were key players in Malcolm X's crowd control security detail. It was my assignment to draw the two men into a felonious federal crime so that they could be arrested by the FBI and kept away from managing Malcolm X's Audubon ballroom door security on February 21st, 1965. On February 16th, 1965, the Statue of Liberty plot was carried out and the two men were arrested just days before the assassination of Malcolm. At that time, I was not aware that Malcolm X was the target. On February 21st, 1965, I was ordered to be at the Audubon Ballroom, where I was identified by witnesses while leaving the scene. Thomas Johnson was later arrested and wrongfully convicted to protect my cover and the secrets of the FBI and the NYPD. I have placed my full confession into the care of my cousin, Reginald Wood, Jr. I have requested this information be held until after I have passed away. It is my hope that this information is received with the understanding that I have carried these secrets with a heavy heart and remorsefully regret my participation in this matter. Raymond A. Wood.
Joining us now is Baba Zach Kondo, author of Conspiracies, Unraveling the Assassination of Malcolm X. Baba, glad to have you on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
I'm glad to be here.
First and foremost, got to get your reaction to that news conference on Saturday where he read that letter from an NYPD undercover police officer.
Yeah, well, first off, it's not any new information. What I think is good about it, though, is it's basically demonstrating once again the role that organizations outside of the Nation of Islam, my book basically argues that three forces killed Malcolm X. The Nation of Islam were the trigger people, the NYPD, which is what Woods represents, and then the FBI, who helped to pretty much organize everything. What this revelation basically shows is that the, excuse me, what this thing shows is once again the significant role that the FBI and the NYPD played. And let me identify something that didn't come out in this thing. Woods was a member of a secret unit of the NYPD known as BALSI, the Bureau of Special Services and Investigation. The best way to understand him is that they basically represented a counterintelligence apparatus, like a miniature FBI is what BALSI basically represented. And their job was to infiltrate organizations. If you're familiar with the counterintelligence program, most of your listeners are. BALSI was simply a city version of the counterintelligence program. So they were secretive. And this guy Woods, one point that we want to make is that an African person cannot infiltrate the Ku Klux Klan. So when a Woods was recruited, the only way that they could use him, that a BALSI could use him, was against our own people. And the problem that I had listening to that news conference yesterday was that, first off, Woods' nephew was making excuses for him. He chose to be a traitor for Malcolm. He chose to be a traitor for our people. And him talking about, they were going to whitemail him and they arrested him and all that. All of that is part of the game. You either choose to be a man and to basically support your people, or you choose to betray your people. That guy chose to betray our people.
And you know, this, of course, in many ways, people now seeing the story of William O'Neill, who did the exact same thing to Fred Hampton, where the FBI, in conjunction with the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, killed Fred Hampton. And when people talk about the dissension, when you talk about even what took place within the Nation of Islam, the anger towards Malcolm X, we also cannot deny the reality of the FBI having people on the inside stirring that dissension up. We saw the exact same thing in other groups. I mean, the reality is when Dr. King was killed, one of the folks who was on that balcony leaning over his body was somebody who was an undercover CIA operative. So again, American forces saw Black liberation, Black freedom as the #1 threat to this country, and they chose to say, we're going to dismantle it by cutting the head off.
Exactly. And one thing that we also must always remember, you know, the Church Committee was a congressional committee that took place in the mid-1970s, 1975, and they investigated the activities of the FBI and the activities of the CIA. And one of the things that came out of that, you know, and this is not, you know, Roland Martin talking or Babazak Kondo talking, this is what the committee found. It found that when it came to African people, the most violent techniques were accepted. And that meant anywhere from assassination to wrongly imprisoning people, to beating people, shooting people in broad daylight. Just to put this in some context, in broad daylight one day in the late 1960s, at the Los Angeles branch of the Black Panther Party, the FBI had a raid, and they sent, carloads of their people. They fired over 1,000 bullets into the Central Avenue headquarters of the Black Panther Party of Los Angeles. Over 1,000 bullets. And luckily, because we had a brother there by the name of Geronimo Pratt, he had like 5 minutes to get everything together. They got a phone call or something, and he was able to fortify it. But I'm saying 1,000 bullets into one room, hoping to kill as many Panthers as they could. Lucky for us, there were a couple injuries, but nobody was killed.
The thing that, first of all, where do you think, with this letter being read, where does this go from here? And for people who have not, they may have read stories and stuff along those lines, should there be a push for folks to push President Joe Biden to declassify any and all documents related to COINTELPRO, Malcolm X, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., any other folks during that particular era? Has everything that they have, has it all been released, or is it still a lot of redacted information?
Right. No, it's still, put it this way. When I was doing my research on Malcolm X, my book was published in 1993, and it's being revised right now. But at the time that I did my research, I had a conversation one time with this young brother who worked in the reading room of the FBI, because, you had to go there to do the research. And he told me something very interesting. The King file at that particular time, the headquarters file, was 500,000 pages. He told me that they had destroyed at least that number, that people like me and you will never see. And because this is an eternal type of thing, there's no accountability. Now, here's the thing, though. I hear what you're saying in reference to releasing the documents, but oftentimes the most important documents, the smoking gun documents that the average person needs to see, those documents in most cases will never see the light of day.
Of course. Because
the FBI and other intelligence apparatus, they have that, they have that freedom, and they justify it under the national security. And that's a big umbrella.
Well, plus we also know that when J. Edgar Hoover died, he gave instructions for his secretary to basically corral and gather all of those secret files. We don't know what happened to them. We don't know if they're stored somewhere. We don't know if he instructed her to destroy them. But we know that when Justice Department leaders went to his home and office, they found nothing.
Right. One thing that we do know, though, he had tens of thousands of documents in this warehouse. And per his will, his secretary, a woman by the name of Helen Grundy, if memory serves me, she made a phone call. Some trucks pulled up maybe 30, 40 minutes later at this warehouse. They took out some documents, and then accidentally they burnt down the facility with the rest of them in there. So there were certain documents he apparently wanted preserved, and the rest of them went up in flames. Real shocker, huh?
Nah, no shock at all. What happens next? Do you think this changes anything? Do you think anything comes about from this revelation or the reading of this letter?
Right. You know what? I think what it does, because remember, supposedly Cyrus Vance, the DA of Manhattan, is supposed to be considering looking into investigating the possibility of reopening, the trial of, the case that sent two innocent men, Butler and Johnson, to prison. Now, I'll be honest, I've been in contact with them. They had asked for a copy of my book. I haven't heard anything from them, but I guess you could say that I wouldn't hold my breath. I think the best thing that is likely to happen, right now is that public opinion will be piqued, people will become interested, and depending on what type of a thrust, particularly we African people give, will dictate how far. But I think we would be naive to think that there's going to be any movement from a legal standpoint unless we organize and pressure and threaten and demand. So if anything is going to happen through the system, and you're talking to a pessimist because this system, has never had our best interest at heart. And keep this in mind. Think about what is the repercussion here. If they find, say they open up a trial and the trial proves that there was some government complicity in Malcolm's assassination. Do we really think that the FBI or the courts are going to, take that real serious? And see, that's my problem, as a, having studied this, this government as long as I have, but it doesn't mean that it can't happen. So I guess you could say I'm a modified optimist that maybe something can happen to this. But I still say we should push it. Let's not, I like what the daughters are doing right now, and use whatever vehicles, whatever weapons, whatever resources that they can use, that we can use to, bring attention and then open this up. And then we roll the dice.
Baba Zach Kondo, we surely appreciate it, sir. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you. It was an honor.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have, you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it. Please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Charges in Plano, Texas have been dropped against an 18-year-old black man who spent a night in jail after he was strangely arrested for walking in the street. Officers responded to a call that a black male wearing a short-sleeved shirt was stumbling along the road in icy conditions. They were dispatched to do a welfare check, but ended up following Rodney Reese, a high school student, on his way home from work. Officers followed Reese for 2 minutes and 17 seconds before they arrested him on a pedestrian in the roadway charge. Here is the body cam footage.
Dude, stop. We're trying to help you.
Hey, man. Whoop. You trying to get home? Are you trying to get home? You straight? You need a ride somewhere? Hey, look, we just want to make sure you're all right. We just want to make sure you're all right.
Come here.
Sir, you need to talk to us, okay? Sir.
I'm good, bro.
Can you calm down? All right? Sir.
Don't touch me.
Sir, look, we just want to talk to you. All right?
Good. I'm on the way home. I'm straight.
Okay.
Where the fuck I'm going?
Okay, but you're walking in the middle of the road.
I understand that. My bad. I'm not in the middle of the road. What's up, home?
We just trying to figure out where you're going.
Home. I just said that. Oh, you okay, dude?
Watch out, man.
Where's home at?
Do you want us to just give you a ride?
No, I'm good. I do this every night, literally. I'm straight.
Okay. You ain't cold or nothing?
No.
With that cheese shirt on?
I'm good.
What's your name, man?
Nah.
Huh?
I don't know.
You don't know? Can you just stop and talk to us for a minute?
Bro.
Do you mind? Do you mind just talking to us for a minute? Just talk to us for a minute. Just talk to us for a minute.
I ain't gonna put my hand on a female. Please don't touch me.
Okay. I'm just trying to get your attention, okay? We're just trying to make sure you're okay.
Ma'am, don't touch me.
We're trying to make sure you're okay. We're trying to make sure you're okay. Sir?
No, what?
We're trying.
No, what?
We're doing an investigation.
I don't care. I'm going home.
You are officially detained.
No.
Yes,
Sir.
yes you are.
Bro. Stop.
Just relax.
Just relax, all right?
Just relax.
We're just trying to talk
Bro,
to you.
I got an anger problem. Please get off me. No.
Stop.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to touch.
Yeah, you didn't.
Stop.
Put your hands behind your back now. You are not free to go.
Why?
The next thing you do is going to be get a charge right now.
For what?
Because you're pushing on an officer.
I'm not pushing. How am I pushing on you?
You're actually resisting, dude. It's resisting arrest or detention. Give us the channel.
Please let me go.
No.
My house is literally right there.
Can you just tell us the address?
Wait.
Relax, dude.
Put a contact.
I'm trying to...
Please just let me go.
Wow, you're really making this worse right now.
We're trying
Honestly.
to do that.
Okay, he's about to... All right.
It's not back here.
This is why I did.
Dude, just stop.
Stop
resisting.
Just let me go. Let me go.
Stop.
Let me go.
Stop resisting.
Bro, first of all, bro, just let me go.
Just relax.
Bro, now my...
Give us...
What the fuck is wrong with you? You got me fucked up.
Get on the ground, dude. Just get on the ground. Stop resisting.
You want me to get on this snow after y'all was worried about me? Really?
You're causing this problem right now.
This never had to go this way, man.
I got me. Go ahead.
You got it?
Sorry, dude.
Yeah.
Just relax this arm.
Relax your arms, okay? Just relax your arms. What's your name?
Let go. I'm gonna take care of your phone, dude.
What's your name? Can you at least tell me your first name? No, I'm good. Tell me your first name.
I'm good.
We honestly were just trying to check on you.
That's cool.
Okay.
I said I'm
First
good.
of all, you were in the roadway, which is a
Right.
safety hazard, and you're not supposed to be in the roadway.
And offense.
All right?
You're not at liberty to move around.
Bro,
Okay, just relax.
I thought you was turning me around.
No,
Why
sir.
are you trying to put me on the ground for it?
Just relax.
Moving around.
Just relax.
You're not at liberty to move
Where do
around.
you live?
I can do what the fuck I want.
Where do you live?
Actually, right now you can.
Yes, I can.
Where do you live? Where do you live?
All right. If he's not gonna cooperate,
He's going in the car.
popping him in the back of the car.
Come on, let's walk this way. You got a walker? Stop right here. Stop right here. Please the car for me. Spread your feet out. Sorry. You got anything that's gonna poke you, stab you, nothing like that? You don't have any weapons on you like that?
Now, folks, this took place, again, last week in Plano, Texas, which is located just north of Dallas. Now, the Plano Police Department posted this video on their page, their Facebook page. Immediately were condemned by a significant number of people. Rodney Reese, high school student who worked at Walmart, okay, walking home. Now, officers, they followed him because they claimed this report of a man stumbling in the street. Plano's police chief said the arrest was not consistent with the reason officers were called. The department will determine whether an internal investigation is warranted. This is the kind of nonsense that we see, Kieran, that is crazy. If you examine the video, the brother's trying not. He's trying not. First of all, that's wrong. It was body camera footage, not dash cam footage. Here's the crazy part, y'all. The body camera footage is shocking. He's trying not to engage them. He's trying not to deal with them because he just wants to go home. Second of all, he doesn't have to give them his information. This is why Colin Kaepernick has his Know Your Rights camps. He doesn't have to. Absolutely crazy.
So the big problem that I see with what happened is that the police in Plano are harassing young black people in what is one of the fastest growing suburbs in the state of Texas. You have people moving from all over the country into Texas, and to harass black people is just appalling. I've lost friends to this type of gun violence or this type of violence from police. I had a friend who was shot 5 times in the city of Pittsburgh. He managed to survive. But this is just par for the course, not just in Texas, but around the country. I know you see a lot of really racist incidents in Texas regarding hair, especially. I remember the young man from outside of Houston who was suspended from school for his dreadlocks. This type of harassment of young black people is just completely uncalled for by local governments in Texas.
The thing here, Teresa, when watching this body camera footage, is that he just wants to be left alone. Here's the deal. I know it's cold. I get it. I see that it's snowing. But if somebody doesn't want to be bothered by the cops, keep walking. Do you need a ride home? Nope, I'm good. I do this every night. He clearly wasn't bothered by the cold weather. He was fine, jeans and a shirt. Hey, leave me alone. Okay? Hey, they offered us public assistance. He said no. No, they chose to keep pursuing him and continue to pursue him. And again, when he declined to tell them his address and his name, so you're not going to tell us. He doesn't have to. Right. He was trying to avoid what eventually happened. Him being detained, cuffed, taken to jail, and spend a night in jail.
Absolutely. And this high school, black man, just came from a hard days of work. And, obviously there's snow on the ground, so he didn't go through bus transportation, didn't need a ride. He's probably like, look, I'm 2 to 3 blocks from my home. I just want to get there. And I think, countless times, most of us just want to get to our destination without being disturbed, right? We're already fighting, especially if he's working at Walmart. He's definitely not making $15 an hour. So I'm sure he's already probably frustrated about that. But the other portion is he's literally just trying to avoid confrontation and honestly probably just not trying to get shot. I think many times we have seen black men talking to the police and then it goes left. So I think he decided to do the opposite. I'm glad he's still alive. I'm glad he can, use this we can all absolutely use this as an example of non-confrontational from us, and yet we're still being confronted with aggression and with the need for them to feel like, hey, let us help you. Like, it's okay to help when we ask you for assistance, but again, we don't have to respond. You have to know your rights. He knew his rights. I'm grateful for the body cam footage, but it's interesting to me that the Plato Police Department thought they were in the right to actually, with this type of interaction with him, for them to actually post and see, this is what happens when you don't cooperate with the police. No, what it actually shows, and I think the video was very clear, is this is what happens when you try to avoid confrontation with the police, and yet you still get put in the paddy wagon.
It just, Juliana, it's just, he's not trying to engage them. He's not trying to anger them. I'm good, no problem. Ma'am, I don't want to touch a woman. I don't want to strike a police officer. Please don't touch me. All of that. Yet with all of that, he still gets arrested. He still gets put in the car. Now, and this is the thing that white folks don't understand. He is now saddled with the trauma for the rest of his life of that experience. When all he was trying to do was a black man walking home, trying to get home from Walmart, through the snow.
Therese has it completely right. This man is just minding his business. Literally, all he's doing is minding his business. He didn't ask for help. He didn't need any help. This is the crux of white supremacy, is that you can put yourself in my space and decide what I need, and then when I refuse it, decide that you are going to exert your white supremacist power. This brother, if you look at we looked at the body cam, car cam, whatever, he's literally minding his business. There's nothing illegal about walking in the snow in a t-shirt. That's your business. Why in the you-know-what are these people insistent on engaging him and harassing him? That's a question. And the answer is, anytime a black person is walking down the street, there are some white folks who feel that they have the right to engage them and harass them. This, you've heard me talk before, Roland, about my nephews. I have one who is 37 and one who is 35, and I adore them, and they're young black men. They're tall, they're buff, and every morning I get up and pray that they don't have any drama. And they do have drama because they get stopped here, stopped there, for the same kind of stuff. And it breaks my heart to see the ways that their energy gets broken down by this kind of crap. And we really, as Teresa, what was wrong with these people? They're going to post this and say, oh, you have to obey the police? No. You police have to act like you have some good, you-know-what sense.
Again, charges dropped, and frankly, I hope he sues. And the police chief should fire those officers. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just absolutely ridiculous. All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win.
This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. We talk about how do you use the power. That's what Republicans are doing right now in Georgia. What they have been doing, folks, is, they are absolutely targeting the issue of voter suppression. They are passing and introducing bills at a furious pace that in many ways is going to greatly change what happened in that state. Why? Because they're angry that black folks voted. They're angry that black people took advantage of various rules. So check this out. Ari Berman tweeted this here. Republicans, go to my iPad, Republicans on Georgia's Senate Ethics Committee, this is an hour ago, just voted to repeal automatic voter registration, which 5 million of the state's 7.6 million voters used to register. More egregious voter suppression in Georgia. Okay, folks, do you see this here? Then he also tweeted this here. Georgia's Senate Ethics Committee also voted to repeal no excuse absentee voting, which 1.3 million people used in 2020, including 450,000 Republicans. Republicans trying to undo everything in state that makes it easy to vote. Do you hear that? That, folks, is so you understand. And so check this out. Ari also tweeted this here. Press releases from Brad Raffensperger, who's a Republican. Brad, that Georgia has gold standard trifecta of automatic voter registration, early voting, and no excuse absentee voting. He writes, Georgia Republicans have now passed bills through committees to repeal or restrict all three. If you want to understand what's going on, that explains what Republicans are doing. Now, folks, what's been happening there? Black caucus members have been leading the effort in this whole deal. They've been battling not just on voter suppression, but also on Republicans who want to use the power in the state legislature to tell local governments how they must do their jobs. One of those areas, defund the police. State Representative Rita Shannon spoke on the floor of the Georgia House. Wait till I see this video, where she lays out, okay, and just blisters Republicans for their nonsense. And I thought they were all about local control. Watch this.
In committee, it was said that this bill was to defeat calls to defund the police, which is really just black and brown communities saying that over-policing leads to more police killings and police brutality in our communities. And there are better ways for the money to be spent, and let us figure that out in our communities. Republicans know that these issues are connected, and that's the reason why you didn't want to talk about this bill yesterday, because it was the 1-year anniversary of Ahmaud Arbery being killed. So you know that this stuff is connected. But let's talk about the real animus for these bills, because Georgia's not the only state that's seeing one of these bills. These bills are being filed across the country by Republicans. And I think that this is a weird PR campaign by Republicans to absolve themselves of the fact that domestic terrorists from their party went up to the Capitol on January 6th and killed and maimed police officers. Defund the police has never killed any police officers. Defund the police has never maimed any police officers. So, Republicans, you can continue to run these weird PR campaigns if you want to. Democrats will continue to press for justice and to make sure that we don't see any more of the following: Eric Gardner's, Michael Brown, Laquan McDonald, Tamir Rice, Walter Scott, Samuel DuBose, Freddie Gray, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Rashard Brooks, Jamarian Robinson, Shalee Tilson, Tanisha Anderson, Alexia Christian, Maya Hall, Nick Thomas, and many more. I'll yield the next.
Now, folks, that's one issue we have to talk about. We're going to speak to Representative Shannon in just a moment. Also today, you had protesters in the state capitol protesting Senate Bill 531, dealing with, again, all of these voter suppression bills. Representative Park Cannon is standing with those protesters. State trooper speaking through a bullhorn. She decides to stand in front of the bullhorn. Why is this state trooper physically touching her for no reason whatsoever? Watch this.
Attention. I am Sergeant Walker with the Georgia State Patrol. You are in violation of 1611 34.1.
Go. Step aside, ma'am. Step aside. Now.
You must disperse immediately or you will be arrested. Disperse immediately or you will be arrested.
Representative Cannon steps in front of the bullhorn. State trooper moves her out of the way. For what reason? All the other trooper had to do was simply raise his bullhorn. She wants to blow her ears out. That's on her. She's demanding an apology from that state trooper. He's saying, I'm not going to apologize. Joining us right now on Roland Martin Unfiltered is Georgia State Representative Park Cannon, as well as Georgia State Representative Renita Shannon. Glad to have both of you here. Let's deal with this, because all these things are tied together. And Representative Cannon, I'm watching the video. I don't understand the deal. You stand in front of the bullhorn. All he had to do was raise the bullhorn, go to the left or to the right. Why did that trooper think that he had the power to touch you, to physically move you out of the way? And I saw you talking to him. What was that exchange about?
They feel like they have the power because earlier today they were doing that to unarmed other people in the state capitol, specifically a Black man who was speaking up about the need to stop House Bill 531. They do it because this is what they do.
And but okay, where I come from, I'm just trying to understand where a cop has the right to touch someone, to move them out of the way. Now, if you are arresting someone, if you are ordering them to move and they refuse to do so, but to physically move you out of the way, under what right do they have to do that?
They have no right. These are the microaggressions in policing that we speak fervently against, just like on the House floor yesterday against the House bill, making it clear that they are standing in between a conversation on increasing transparency in policing and limiting transparency in policing.
What people, look, I've always warned our folks, constantly, I've warned them that when there is Black success, it's always followed by white backlash. I warned folks in Florida after Amendment 4 was passed, don't think for a second Republicans are going to accept this. And what if they do? Change the law, made it difficult, saying, oh, you got to pay all your fines and fees to get your right to vote back. After November, Biden-Harris wins, then Warnock and Ossoff win. I said, y'all, is coming. These folks are going to come after black people in a fierce way because they cannot stand losing. And that's exactly what you're seeing. Representative Shannon, when you were on the floor talking about defund the police. And I keep saying this. Republicans love talking about local control, big government, get government out of our lives. Don't tell us what to do. Now in the Georgia legislature, they want to do the exact same thing Alabama did, Mississippi did, Texas did, Missouri did. They want to be able to say, no, we're going to tell you in your cities how you should do your job, as opposed to the local leaders that voters voted. They really are saying to all those cities in Georgia with black leadership, we're going to tell y'all what the hell to do.
Absolutely. And they've had a long history of doing this. This is not the first time. I like to talk about how much nice white racism happens at the Capitol. These people want to silence black people through the legislation that they pass, and then they want to have you in the ante room. And it's not going to work. Right after Brian Kemp was, after the election from Stacey Abrams, I led a legislator boycott to say, basically, you're not going to run these racist, homophobic, sexist campaigns and then just act like it didn't happen and you want everybody to attend your speeches. It's not going to happen. You have to call these people out because they really want to avoid full accountability for the types of legislation that they pass. And so, to your point, these defund the police bills, the governor comes down and shouts, well, in Georgia, we back the blue. That's not what happened on January 6th. And I let them know.
And on that particular point right there, which is a critical one, that all these Republicans, a cop was killed on January 6th. One had an eye gouged out. One lost 3 fingers. Several committed suicide. But you know what? They're patriots. Those were patriots. And we still stand by Donald Trump. I have been saying white fear, the changing of the demographic of this country, the changing of the look of this country is causing these white folks to say, no, we are going to try to guarantee that we are in control and holding power for as long as we can. So if they're able to gerrymander districts, voter suppression, if they're able to sit here and the crap that's happening, now why these idiot Democrats don't want to get rid of the filibuster, the Republicans, their deal is we might be in the minority, but we want to be able to control policy in this country. And if we control the courts, anything y'all pass, we can overrule as well. So people better buckle up to understand what's really happening here. And Georgia is a ground zero for what we're talking about.
And I think the main thing that they are resisting is that, for so long, our government, and it still looks this way today, but for so long, our government has mostly been made up of the people who have been able to vote the longest, and that is white men. And so they are resisting the fact that now you have voices like myself and Representative Cannon coming in saying, hey, this stuff, it's not that this stuff is divisive. It's not that, you're upset that you're hearing new voices that were previously suppressed. We're happy to be those voices. We know what happens in our communities, and that's why I read them the names of just a few Black people who have been killed by police. We know what's happening in our communities. We know what we need, and you're not going to tell us that we don't know what's happening in our communities.
Representative Cannon, we spent about 5 weeks in Georgia. We were on the ground, going all around the state, live streaming, covering these rallies, because I told our viewers, we got to be there. It's important that we can't ignore what's happening there. Then I said, we got to continue. We got to be in these places. And so what is the pushback like? Republicans control both chambers. They control the governor's mansion. But what's the plan to fight this, to battle this? Because for them, they're just going to run roughshod and just pass these things left and right.
It's the fiscal impact. House Bill 531 will cost the state of Georgia $32 million to implement. That's not even including any of the lawsuits that will follow very soon after the governor, if he does, signs it. The rest of the voter suppression bills, there's up to 78 today, many of them 30 pages long. That newest one, all of those together, would cost our state $57 million, still minus lawsuits. So what we really are hitting home at is our state cannot afford to not invest in labor payments right now, healthcare right now for people. Real life people are going through, and we're standing in the gap. So today, yesterday, we were standing in the gap for our constituents We'll go back on Monday and we'll go towards crossover day, which is only 2 legislative days away. And you just have to get the bills from the House to the Senate or vice versa by March 8th.
And the other thing that you should know is it's not just this year, the result of the November election. They have been passing voter suppression bills for as long as I've been elected. I served on the Governmental Affairs Committee, which deals with election law. And my first year was 2017. Serving on that committee, there was not a year that I did not see bills come through that were meant to target Black and brown voters to make sure that voices get silenced. So they've been at this for a long time. And people like Brad Raffensperger, Gabriel Sterling, they are no heroes. These are the same people who would say that Trump is telling a big lie about fraud in the election. Yes, he is. But also, before they were. Gabriel Sterling and Brad Raffensperger, they've all been a part of it, telling the lie about voter fraud. And it's all just been an attempt to suppress Black and brown voters who they knew were eventually going to show up in elections in a big way.
What are y'all calling on citizens of Georgia to do? And what do you want folks around the country to also be doing?
We are calling on we're calling on folks in Georgia to let the governor know that we don't want these bills. Let the Speaker of the House know that we don't want these bills. But more importantly, until your earlier point, the segment that you were talking about before with removing the filibuster, we need the Biden administration to make good on the promise that they will pass some federal bill that will ensure that we can have free and fair elections across the country. We need that because you see in states like Georgia, these people are determined to make sure that Black and brown voices cannot be heard through free and fair elections. So we're asking people to reach out to their federal, the people who represent them at the federal level to say this needs to be a priority. Yes, I understand you're doing COVID. And after you do COVID relief, the very next thing that has to happen is you have to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. You have to pass SR1. We need some type of protection.
It's all connected. We want people to share their stories. If you voted absentee, if you voted by mail, if you voted in person, if you voted early, we need your legislator to know your stories so that they can directly address and say, you cannot attack Sunday voting. We can anecdotally say that will attack those to the polls. But what we can really also say is I have heard from 36 constituents in the past hour who said that they favored that style of voting. And in this moment, when we're still in a pandemic, we're begging people to wash their hands and to just take care and precaution, but still access their right to vote. We must meet them with the resources necessary for them to do that. So stay close to your legislator. There are 3 legislative days left for this one big bill, House Bill 531, to move from the House to the Senate. And even if that bill does not move, there are bills already moving back to the House from the Senate that have been passed, just like repealing automatic voter registration at the DMV, where we go to get our licenses renewed.
So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that this stuff is so racist, what they're doing, because many of the things that they are now legislating against are proposals that Republicans actually pushed. So now they are trying to say you need an excuse to vote absentee. Well, Republicans are the ones who took away having to have an excuse to vote absentee in 2005. So they were comfortable with really expanding the franchise to make sure that more people could participate in voting when it was mostly their voters, when it was mostly white voters. But now that we have shown up in the biggest way we've ever shown up in elections in Georgia, now absentee voting is filled with fraud. Now there's an issue with the drop boxes. Now there's an issue with how we vote in Georgia. Now there's all these things that need to be fixed. But nobody had any of these concerns prior to November or prior to the November election. It's clear what they're trying to do.
So, where are the state's white Democrats, white progressives? Are they out there protesting? Are they at the state capitol? Are they using their voices?
They are. They're trying to. It's also very difficult right now because the Speaker of the House definitely is using COVID as a vehicle to make sure that the public does not really have a be in the Capitol and really to make their voices heard. So, these folks, they do things like move committee meetings around so that it's hard for constituents to come show up and use their voice in committee meetings. They play all kinds of tricks, and they have been for years to make sure that it's really hard for the public
Are there any plans to do, granted, I know it's COVID, but mass rallies to show support? Of course, we were there, like I say, all over the place, whether it was Columbus and Albany and Savannah, there in Atlanta, and other places as well. Are there plans to do demonstrations across the state, a show of force? Because, again, what people don't realize is next year, they are afraid of Stacey Abrams beating Brian Kemp. They are afraid of Pastor Raphael Warnock winning a full 6-year term. And so what I am saying to folks is we can't simply just sit back and relax. We have to understand that they're doing this because they see the numbers. And the Republican leader in the House, I think it was in the House, said, if we allow this type of voting, Republicans will lose every election. So they're not trying to make an argument on policy. They're trying to say, how can we strip away as many, make it impossible or difficult for folks to vote because we can win by the margins.
There are rallies. There was a rally yesterday and there was a rally earlier today, which is what led to the incident with Representative Cannon. So people are showing up to try to make their voices heard.
Over 20 statewide organizations wrote a letter when the bill was quickly changed overnight to say, stop this. Seriously, our entire state is watching you, and we will continue to mobilize our members about this issue because this is one that should be based on evidence, not on conspiracy theories that have been peddled again through legislative committee hearing and now a legislative draft. It is so critically important that everyone continue to mobilize. Right now, the state capitol in Georgia is under construction. It is COVID-19. It is a pandemic. We want people to still engage with us on the live stream committee hearings, but we know that there is a level of separation that is happening right now, which is why sometimes we go on TikTok and we tell people about the voter registration repeals because we want people to actually see what is happening. It's going to take a really big strategy to stop this bill before March 8th, but we actually believe that we can do it. Today we saw a bill got pulled from the floor because there were members who were down protesting, so they didn't have enough to vote. So it'll be interesting to see how these 2 weeks go. And if these Republicans can understand, you are attacking your own voters as well. 5 million of the 7 million registered by the DMV. Why take it away now?
We need Democrats to get tough, kill the filibuster, and pass some federal piece of legislation that protects states like Georgia and other states, because we're not the only ones who need this help and support. We need Democrats to get tough, kill the filibuster, use the power that we gave you when we all came out to vote, and pass some type of bill that will protect us to make sure that we can have free and fair elections.
Representative Cannon, Representative Shannon, we certainly appreciate it. Y'all keep swinging hard, and we'll keep covering this as well. Keep us abreast of what's going on, and whatever help we can provide, we certainly will be there for you.
Thank you, Roland, and we love your show. You are the truth.
Woo, thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Thank you very much. All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have, you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it. Please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Let's go to California, where a newly released video shows a deadly confrontation between sheriff's deputies and a homeless man in San Clemente, California in September. In the video, 2 Orange County sheriff's deputies who were on patrol assigned to the homeless outreach team they heard deciding whether to confront 42-year-old Kurt Reinhold. One deputy is heard saying, quote, "Watch this, he's going to jaywalk." One of the deputies then asked Reinhold, "Are you going to stop, or are we going to have to make you stop?" Reinhold responds, "Jaywalking here? That's ridiculous." Video captured by bystanders shows the confrontation escalate quickly. Reinhold then says, "What is your problem? Why are you touching me?" Watch this.
There we go. You hit me, dude. It's control, man. I don't know. It is. Look down, you just stop in the middle. Don't make case law, Gabriel. Not your problem. We're gonna identify him, huh? You're getting quite close. It's fine. Ready? How you doing? How you doing?
As I said, video captured by bystanders shows the confrontation escalate quickly. Reinhold says, "What is your problem? Why are you touching me?" Moments later, both deputies tackle Reinhold. One of the deputies shouts that Reinhold had his gun. Surveillance video appears to show Reinhold's hand near one of the deputies' holsters. A deputy then fired 2 shots, killing Reinhold. At this time, the Sheriff's Department has only responded by releasing a pre-recorded video stating that it is withholding judgment until all facts are known and the investigations are complete. Again, Julian, what's crazy here is this started because he was jaywalking.
This started.
He's dead. He's now dead. But it started supposedly for jaywalking.
It started because these police officers have an axe to grind against people. It started because they were exerting their power, their ability to mess with anybody. This man wasn't bothering anybody. Yes, he was jaywalking, but hell, we live in D.C., Roland. How many days of the week do you jaywalk? Or me. That's not a crime that has a death penalty. What we have here are out-of-control police officers, and I'm glad that you're raising this up because we keep hearing these stories and people say, "Oh, yeah, but the police are okay." Some of them, but many of them are essentially harassing people, and they're exerting their power, and this is the issue. It's power. They're exerting their power. When you go back to the beginning, he's jaywalking. Looks like they're almost stalking him. This is absurd.
It is just, again, if you're sitting here, if you're a police officer, Kieran, and if you see somebody doing something, if you see wrongdoing happen, I get it. But jaywalking.
Yep. The level of selective enforcement is just crazy to me. I mean, you see somebody who is peaceful and, you just decide to roll up on them and harass them and then kill them. It goes back to the same thing that I said before about the incident in Plano. You just have a level of government harassment of Black people that a lot of times ends in death. And I really think we need to call upon the Biden administration to do something about this epidemic of Black people, Black men especially, being killed. So it's disgusting that we continue to have to go through this. And I'm glad I didn't have to watch another Black man get killed. I know it happened, and I'm so sorry that it did, and feel for his family. But it's just to the point now where it seems like every other day we're watching another video of another Black person being killed, and it's just terrible. Look at that face. It's so sad.
I mean, that brother, he's gone, Teresa, because you got cops who are they just do what they do. And this is the crazy stuff here. I mean, you look at the Plano, the perfect example, that brother could be dead in Plano. That's how things escalate and Black men end up getting killed.
Yeah, so I mean, these videos are in strict contrast, but also the same, So I mean, in the one hand, you have the homeless man who, was literally walking across the street, and it's not a death sentence. It should be actually what it's constituted as is a ticket, but it's not warranted for a gun to be drawn and shots to be fired and your life is to be lost. So it's very interesting circumstances. And again, this is the time where, it's just too many times we're all having these conversations about justice and what does criminal justice reform looks like. It looks very clearly if we start to, start putting our powers legislatively and judicially into action. So what does that mean? That means we need to, escalate and increase and decrease the police budget, understanding that, these people are using their powers to get away with really murder, and also put into place some of the reforms that has been repeatedly stated over and over. And I think if we start doing that, we can then start to see results. But right now, it just seems like it's on a standstill, and thus these policemen and deputy sheriffs are having a free-for-all on Black lives.
It is certainly sad. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible.
No charcoal grills are allowed. I'm white. I got you, Carl. Illegally selling water without a permit on my property. Whoa! Hey! You don't live here. I'm uncomfortable.
Take a look at this exchange that happened in Maine between a white woman and a white man over the use of the N-word.
Hey, man, I heard your conversation in there, and you might want to have an outwardly racist conversation in a more private place. Outward? Yeah, I heard you say the N-word multiple times, and that's just not cool, dude. You don't like that word? No, because it's not appropriate. It's a slur.
Well, you call it a slur, but my conversation, which I'm hoping to have with you, is why would it be a slur okay for them to say, but not
there's
me,
a lot of
but
people.
not me
No,
because
there's
I'm
a lot of people in the black community who don't like that word either.
And I appreciate that.
But a lot of black people died with that name being yelled at them, and a lot of people.
A lot of black people enjoy using it as words of endearment.
So I'm curious, what names have white people been called as they've been hauled up trees?
As they've been what?
Hauled up trees and lynched.
Oh, I have no idea.
Exactly.
Cutting somebody off.
Why do you need to use the N-word?
You're ignorant for a teacher.
Why do you need to use the N-word?
I'm going to explain it to you.
Why?
Shut up long enough.
Why do you need to use the N-word?
I tried talking to you. Sorry,
why do you
ignorant.
need to use the N-word?
Sorry. I used to think that you were half.
Why do you need to use the N-word?
Now I know that there's no use for you.
Why do you need to use the N-word?
Because I can.
Because you can.
Because I can. Why are you filming me? And you can do that.
Why do you need to use the N-word? Why do you need to use the N-word? Why do you need to use the N-word?
Because I can.
There it is.
Robert, I'm going to start with you. Why? Why does this guy or this woman essentially have to justify or even explain to this white man why it's not okay for him to use the N-word?
Man, look, shout out to Tyrell or Jamal or whatever her black boyfriend from college's name was, because that woman is an ally. And like whatever he had her in that dorm room watching Malcolm X movies, listening to Jay Dilla and everything, she probably got a kente cloth at home, dashiki, got the Adinkra symbol, all that stuff. So shout out to whoever made her an ally. But let's understand this is the only way that you start rooting these people out, because when you as a black person says something to this white guy, they say, "Oh, you're playing the race card." It takes another white person to approach them in whiteness, and without all of the aggression and anger that goes with it, to approach them in whiteness, and then they can understand and have a civil conversation. So this is something for them to work out amongst themselves. I think that if you want to be a real ally, it's not enough just to turn your Instagram or your Facebook picture to a black square every time that a black person gets shot, but actually to do things such as this to work your way, to start working through the community. And that's why you start weeding it out over the course of a couple generations. It's not going to happen in a day, in an hour, in a week, but over the course of a couple generations, we see these things reducing and eventually going away. A perfect example, if you want to look at the F word, as it relates to the LGBTQIAPK plus community. 20 or 30 years ago, it was in music, it was in movies, it was in comedy. Today, it is gone. If you look at the way that we talk about Jewish Americans in this country, there used to be anti-Semitic slurs and blazing saddles and all sorts of other parts of pop culture. Today, it is gone because they worked it out of the community, and we have to do the exact same thing for the N-word.
Scott?
Yeah, I'm usually cracking up at this segment, but this was a pretty serious segment and a teaching moment. I tell my colleagues at my law firm and my colleagues that don't look like me that given this racial reckoning, given this heightened racial consciousness, I don't want you to be anti-racist, right? Because no one's going to admit that they're a racist. I want you to be anti-racism. I want you to stand up and say this is wrong and weed it out and address it in whatever way you feel comfortable addressing it, so we can weed out systemic and generational racism, right? So nobody's born with a racist gene. No one believes that they're racist, and yet generational systemic racism continues to self-perpetuate in our society. But these moments, like that woman took up the mantle and as an ally said, why do you have to use that word? And in the end, what he told her was really because white privilege says I can use it, right? And he was unapologetic about it. You see, racism rears its ugly head in a despair and impact way. It can be the Proud Boys, but most of the time it's rooted in white privilege, right? And I'm not letting people that don't look like me off the hook, but it manifests itself a lot in these moments. And we need black people, white people, brown people as allies to stand up and say enough is enough, because families are teaching new races every day. Environment where people that don't look like me that they grow up in and they're being taught racism and to use that word. And unless someone like a white ally doesn't stand up or stands up and says, no, that's wrong, then it's going to continue to be generational, and racism is going to rear its ugly head at all generations going forward. This is the moment that we have a chance to stop it. All those white people and brown people that were out there protesting George Floyd, you know, I applaud it, because racism is not a black issue. Let's be serious. It may affect us negatively 400 years from slavery to now, but it's not a black issue. It's America's sin. And to move past and get to the promise of America, of freedom, justice, and equality, it's just not going to be up to me and Monique and Robert and you and Roland Martin. We're going to need everybody to say this is wrong. We don't need any silent partners anymore. And so now is the time. And so I applaud our white ally in that video, but I need millions of white allies to stand up, regardless of in 2043, we're going to be a country of color. I need everyone to stand up to not that word, but to racism.
And Scott, to your point, I was covering the George Floyd protests last year, and there were a lot of white people who came out to protest. And a lot of them that I spoke with, they were like, we didn't know racism was this big of a deal, or we didn't know that systemic racism within the police force was this much of an issue. And instead of just protesting, they came there to learn, to educate themselves and to educate those who look like them as well.
But you know what they also said? If you were out there, or if you were doing political commentary, or if you were listening and reading, what they were telling you, which was even more profound and a blessing or an ally, is that this is not my America. As young white Americans will say, this is not my America. I don't want my America to be this. I want the promise to be for everyone. I want it to be for everyone. And that's the beginning. It's not the end. We got to have those courageous conversations. We got to make sure that people are tolerant but accountable, right? And we got to listen and love and forgive, and a path forward together, arm in arm. But that's where it starts, by that white woman standing up and saying no to use of that N-word. It's a great example.
Definitely. Monique, what are your thoughts?
Yes, she definitely showed allyship in that moment. One of the things that I post all the time on Instagram when things like this happen is get your folks, get your own folks. I check my folks. I might not do it publicly, but surely if I disagree with something, Scott is on here, he can tell you there will be a conversation and it will be good. It'll be fulsome. And that's what we have to do. Correction begins at home. But what I also want to observe is she was the most successful candidate for that conversation, not just her whiteness, but her womanhood, which makes for white womanhood, which is the holy grail in the United States of America. Because see, that man could have been challenged by pretty much anybody else and it go a completely different way. It could have escalated to physical violence, whether it was black man, black woman, white man, brown man, or woman. But here she was, saying to somebody it was obvious she was kind of familiar with, and he said that she was a teacher and she should have been smarter. I was listening to the conversation. So maybe they knew each other, but that's where the power is. When you stand up in your circle and you use the opportunity that you have when you have it, claim your own power and authority over situations and circumstances and people, and teach and correct. And I don't want to assume, like my brother Robert did, that she was under the influence of some prior black relationship. And I don't want to assume that she had some good black girlfriend. And I don't want to assume that it was, she was raised on the other side of the tracks with the rest of us. She may have just been a woman who took the time to read and learn and understand her environment. And maybe she got the spirit of living God on the inside of her. I don't know. It could be a lot of different things. But whatever she's doing, we need more of that. One of the reasons black folks get so exhausted is because we study trying to explain the same stuff over and over again to people who long since should understand understand. Well, if they don't understand it, I'm tired. Let sister step up. She's doing a good job.
Amen. Go ahead, Scott.
All I was going to say, and I would like to make an official motion to take Candace Owens's invite to the barbecue and give it to this white woman because she's been more of an ally to us than some of these other black folks who are in the media speaking down to us. So if she's invited to the barbecue, I'll make brisket.
I love it. All right. Any final thoughts, guys, before I let you go?
I have one quick final thought. You know, it's incumbent upon us, too, as black people. You know, I sit around and smoke cigars and drink tequila with my friends, and if they use the F word in connection to gay people, if they make a slur against our Jewish brothers and sisters, you know, it's up to us to stand up and say no to that. That's not allowed, or you're not going to use that around me, because it can be just as hurtful and just as harmful. Since one of my daughters is gay, I certainly don't allow that to go on at my home or in social settings, because in my mind, they're talking about one of mine, flesh and blood. So it's very personal to me. But I've got to be affirmative and assertive to them more than just once and say, don't use those terms around me, and you shouldn't use them generally. And they say, oh, Scott, we're just talking, right? It's just us here. No, it's no longer accepted for black people, white people, brown people, gay people, Jewish people to traffic in those types of tropes and racially offensive language. We got to get away with it, because words and language matter, especially the ones we use, given what black people have been through for 400 years. And so I'm committed to that corrective behavior. I am. And I do it quite a bit, and I'm doing less of it because my friends and family know it's not to be tolerated when I'm around.
Monique, any final thoughts?
Amens and amens.
All righty there.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have, you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it. Please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. All right, folks, let's get into it. Let's talk politics. First and foremost, what is happening here what's happening in Georgia. We've spent lots of time in Georgia talking about there, and we've been emphasizing to you about Republicans and what they're trying to do. All across the country, Republicans have been putting in place or proposing significant bills that will greatly undercut voting, especially black voters. In Georgia, what they're trying to do, folks, is beyond despicable. Because of what happened with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris winning that state, and John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock both winning U.S. Senate seats, what they're doing, they're actually trying to get rid of voting on Sundays. They want to curtail early voting 5 days. And they're trying to change the law where if you did not vote in the general election, you can't register and vote for the runoff election. It is a number of things that they're doing and trying, folks, that makes no sense whatsoever. And so we're going to be talking about that with Cliff Albright, co-founder of Black Voters Matter. Let me introduce my panel as well. Let me know, folks, when Cliff is there. Of course, our Thursday panel every Thursday, Dr. Greg Carr, Chair of the Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University. Erica Savage-Wilson hosts a Savage Politics podcast, as well as Reese Colbert, Black Women Views. And so, as I said, let's now bring in Cliff Albright into our conversation. Cliff, always glad to see you. It's crazy, Cliff, what they're doing there. And I keep telling people how dastardly it is what's going on. I mean, they are, to say they want to get rid of, because they're scared of souls to the polls, trying to cut early voting down to 5 days. The Republicans in Georgia want to cheat in all future elections.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that's amazing about that, Roland. Good to see you. One is that, basically what they're trying to change is a system that they set up. Back in 2005, they pushed the absentee voting, and mainly because they but the reality was that it was mainly their folks that they were expecting to use it. And to a certain extent, that's been true for some of these years. But as we all know, in 2018 and definitely last year, and then just last month in this runoff elections, Black voters, people of color all across the board, but especially Black voters, used it to a great extent, literally shocked the world by using the vote by mail process. So now a process that they set up, they all of a sudden want to scream is fraudulent and is a fixed situation. And again, keeping in mind that this state went through not one, not two, but 3 different recounts and accounting, whatever, to double check the election. The Secretary of State repeatedly has said that there was no fraud, that this was one of the safest elections that they've ever had. He told the entire country that there was no fraud, and yet you have all of these bills that are coming out under the guise of trying to prevent voter fraud. So we know exactly what it is. It's just straight up voter suppression. It's just straight up Jim Crow. It's just straight up poll taxes and counting of jelly beans. They are shameless in the ways that they're trying to steal our votes.
And again, talking about how significant this is, they are scared to death next year of Stacey Abrams running against Brian Kemp for the race to be governor of Georgia. Also, Senator Raphael Warnock is going to be running for re-election as well. And so they are trying to rig. Donald Trump loved running his mouth. Republicans kept talking about how the election was rigged. This is actually election rigging, what they are trying to do in Georgia.
Yeah, it's election rigging, and it's being led by folks that have been rigging elections for a long time. One of the main sponsors of the largest of these bills, the omnibus bill that includes a whole bunch of these procedure and voter suppression tactics in it, is a representative called Fleming, who years ago in a very rural county, right, and we say this all the time, that when we don't deal with voter suppression in rural areas that happens in the darkness, it's only a matter of time before it expands like bacteria, right, or like a virus. And so this Fleming person literally was trying to steal votes in rural Hancock County, right, trying to get people kicked off the voter rolls, right, trying to investigate voters. And now this is the person that's leading the attack on the statewide voter suppression that's taking place. So again, these are folks that, they've been at this for a long time, but now with the emphasis of the big lie, right, the national big lie, and again, in spite of the fact that we know that there's no fraud taking place in these elections, these are the folks that are attacking our right to vote right here in this state. And again, it just really emphasizes why we critically, urgently, we need H.R. 1 and H.R. 4 at the federal level, the restoration of strengthening the Voting Rights Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We need these acts passed, not tomorrow, not next week. We need them passed yesterday, because that is one of the main ways that we're going to have to have a tool in order to fight against what's taking place, not just in Georgia, but all across the country. As you know, there were 200, it's estimated, I think the Brennan Center estimated that there's 253 bills that have been introduced in 43 states across the country.
Not only that, one of the things they want to do, they want to only allow absentee balloting for folks 75 or older.
That's right. I mean, limiting the absentee to 75 and older, getting rid of no excuse, requiring multiple hard copies of your photo ID. There's even versions talking about, just like they have in Alabama, where you might have to have an affidavit or a witness signature or something to that effect. All of these things, I mean, the range of tactics that they are using, again, is really just shameless. They're not even trying to really hide that it's voter suppression. They're not even really trying to hide. And they've been caught on video in the past. I think it was the speaker, the Republican Speaker of the House, I believe, who was caught saying that if we continue to do this, vote by mail and expanding this voting, that Republicans will never be able to win another election. So they've been very honest about what it is that they're trying to do. The question is, what are we going to do to stop them, both in terms of stopping them in the legislature, stopping them in the courts? As you know, Roland, we're not afraid of suing the state of Georgia. So stopping them in the courts. But again, at the federal level, we have got to have action on these federal bills that are pending in Congress right now. That's why our folks risk their lives in this election cycle to take control of the Senate and to be able to take control of Congress so that we can pass bold action in order to protect our voting rights and all the other major issues that we care deeply about.
Speaking of that, when you talk about taking that bold action, that also means forcing these Democrats, they're going to have to actually get rid of the filibuster. And so what are you, LaTosha Brown and others doing? Because, look, this is what I keep saying. This action has to be taken this year. After this COVID bill, the John Lewis Act should be the next bill. And if that means bringing hundreds of thousands of people to Washington, D.C., dropping them on the Capitol, going door to door, putting pressure on Joe Manchin, on Kristen Sinema, Dianne Feinstein, and others, it has to happen, because if the federal bill is not passed, they can kiss the majority, they can kiss the control away. And you tweeted this the other day. Look, we can't make no argument to somebody who didn't vote as to why they should vote if they didn't use the power when they had it.
That's right. And not only to you can't make that argument to somebody who didn't vote, but even folks who did vote, right? Some first-time voters, some folks that went skeptically to vote, right? I've seen responses to a tweet thread that I did yesterday, where people are giving their personal testimonies of how they helped mobilize younger voters, first-time voters, new voters, skeptical voters, right? Who weren't really feeling the process, but they got them to come out. But now those folks are looking at the process and saying, wait a minute, what's going on? We did all this, we got them power in Congress, and now we gotta rely on a parliamentarian. Like that's something that we never had to say when we was going out there mobilizing voters during this past election cycle. That if you go out here, if you risk your life in the midst of COVID, right, if you put everything on the line, what you are going to win is you're going to win the right to have the parliamentarian decide our future, or you're going to win the right to have Manchin and Sinema to decide our futures. That's not what we were telling folks, and that can't be what the reality is. And so, to your question, we've got to mobilize our folks in all of our states to reach out to their representatives, to put pressure on their congressional leadership, that includes Schumer, in order to deal with these folks that are causing us to not be able to squash the filibuster, right? But to also put pressure on the Biden administration. It's not acceptable that they're looking at the antics of a Manchin and a Sinema, and I call them Manchinema, right? Because they're linked like that. But it's not acceptable that the Biden administration is going to just look at these two folks and allow them to dictate the agenda and not use the tools that they have at their disposal to get these people to act right. At the end of the day, Joe Biden's been in the Senate or in the White House for 47 years. If he ain't learned enough tactics by this point, right, if he didn't learn enough of LBJ tactics at this point to figure out how to count some votes and twist some arms and get some stuff done, then we may have just put the wrong dude in there. Now, I'm not saying he's worse than the person that was there, clearly, but at the end of the day, we have got to pressure him to use every tool he's got at his disposal in order to get these folks to act right, squash the filibuster, and move on this agenda.
And just for anybody to understand, we were very clear. We were going to have to put pressure on whoever was in power. And so I kept saying, voting is one thing. After folks are elected is another thing. And I'm telling you, the threat needs to be laid down right now, Cliff. It needs to be laid down to Chuck Schumer, to Nancy Pelosi, and every Democrat. We will drop 10,000 people a week on that Capitol. And if those folks on January 6th, I'm talking about saying, look, they were there protesting. I'm saying we're going to bring people. We ain't sitting here trying to overthrow stuff. But we're going to bring people to hit every single United States senator, go to every single one of their offices, fill the chamber up, fill the hallways up, because racial justice has to be there. And I don't give a damn about these Senate rules. I don't care about how we all get along and all that sort of stuff. No, damn all of that. The pressure it should be real simple. COVID bill, first. John Lewis voting bill, second. George Floyd Justice Act, third. Now, after that, y'all can sit here and do what you want to do on immigration or infrastructure, but those should be the next first three bills that the Senate and the House confronts.
Those should be the 3 bills. That's got to be the demand. And the other part of the demand is that to whatever extent he has executive authority to move on some of these things, that he needs to be moving on it. For example, even before the HR 1 and HR 4 are passed, the Voting Rights Acts are passed, they can be doing something at the executive level, right? They can be joining in on some of the existing lawsuits that are already floating through the system. Like they can be given support to fight against some of these voter suppression tactics. There's executive action that they can use even while we're trying to get those things passed. But your point is absolutely correct that they have got to prioritize these issues, and not just because it's important to us, but at the end of the day, even if it was just out of their own self-interest, right? Even if it's just out of their own desire to maintain power, what they've got to understand, if they don't act immediately on these voting rights bills, then 2022 can be a wrap, not because of anything that Black Voters Matter does or Fair Fight does or doesn't or anything like that, just because that if they allow this whole slate of bills that is going through these key states, if they allow this to happen, it is going to be incredibly difficult to continue to do what we did last year and what we've been doing. So even if it's just out of a sense of preservation, they need to take action on these issues that we are demanding that they take action on, and that we motivated and mobilized people on throughout the election campaign.
And let's be real clear. Okay, let's just be real clear here. Republicans, we see what they doing. 42 states in America, 42 states, they are proposing voter suppression bills. They wield power. When they have the majority in the House and the Senate and the governor's match on the state level, they say, we're going to sit here and run a train on y'all. And I'm using that language for a reason. That's what they're sitting here doing, Cliff. And Democrats, oh no, we're going to sit here and maintain our congenial rules because, you know, what's going to happen if we're not in power, they're in power. Guess what? They're going to do it like they did with Amy Coney Barrett. So either you use the power when you have it, or you're going to lose the power, and then you can't come to us to save your ass to get it back, because we're going to say, we gave it to you. We went to the polls. We did the best that we could. And let me be real clear. Let me be real clear, white America. Y'all didn't do your job in Maine, where a woman lost. In Kentucky, where McGrath lost. Where a woman lost in Iowa. All them white states, y'all didn't do your job. But guess what? We did what we were supposed to do in Georgia in order to get the doggone Senate. Latinos did what they were supposed to do in Arizona to elect Mark Kelly to get what they were supposed to do. And so now you again wants to bail you out? No, you better use this damn power or you're going to lose it in 2022.
You're exactly right. And that's the deal. And when we say that, you know, people need to be clear. It's not a matter of us as organizers or you as a journalist wishing this on the country or wishing this on Democrats, right? It's a matter of, look, we can read the tea leaves, right? Like I said earlier today, like, you don't blame the doctor for giving the diagnosis. So if I'm telling you that if you fail to move on these policies, that there's going to be consequences and repercussions, it's not because I'm gonna be the one out there that's saying that people don't vote, right? But I am telling you, just off of my experience, just as you, Roland, are telling folks off of your experience, we can see what's coming. And we can already see that if there's not movement on these issues, like you said, the Voting Rights Act, COVID, George Floyd, you know, throw in there the increase in the minimum wage, which right now there's that whole fight over whether that's going to be included in this COVID package. But that if there's not student loan, if there's not enough movement on these issues, and there might be one or two that they lose on, right, or they can't get done, right? But if there's not enough movement on this, we are telling folks there's going to be consequences, because it is human nature that if you convince folks to vote because their vote has power, because their vote will change policies and change their lives, and then that doesn't happen, it's not rocket science to know that you are going to see a decrease in turnout. And it may not, it could be 1%, 4%, 5%, whatever. It doesn't have to be a 50% decrease, but with the razor thin margins that we see, that kind of a decrease could be disastrous. That's what we're trying to tell folks, and they have got to take bold action right now. It's not even bold action because we're talking about policies that are like remarkably popular. The COVID bill is remarkably popular. Increasing the minimum wage, remarkably popular. The voting rights is remarkably popular. So it's not even a big lift. There's just got to be the political will for them to get it done.
Cliff Albright, co-founder of Black Voters Matter. We really appreciate it, man. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Roland.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions,